So, welcome to Literary Hub. Our language is the reflection of ourselves. A language is an exact reflection of the character and growth of its speakers. So, how do we get beauty to this language? So, we use various literary terms in the language that gives beauty to the language, right? So, in today's class, we are going to learn about literary terms. Let's get into the class without wasting time. So, coming to the literary devices, the first one is allegory. An allegory is a type of narrative that uses character and plot to depict abstract ideas and themes. And an allegorical story, things represent more than they appear to on the surface. Many children's fables, such as The Tortoise and the Hare, are simple allegories about morality. But allegories can also be dark, complex, and controversial. Example, Animal Farm by George Orwell. This dystopian novella is one of the modern literature's best-known allegories, a commentary on the events leading up to Stalin's rise and the formation of the Soviet Union. The pigs at the heart of the novel represent figures such as Stalin, Trotsky, and Molotov. So here, let's see what is allegory. As I have read the definition of this allegory, once let me tell you what's allegory very clearly. Generally, we start reading the stories, right? So type of narrative that use characters and plot in the depict abstract ideas in the sense the things or the images which have been represented in the story makes the reader to imagine many more things, right? So in a simple word, we can say that allegory is a story within a story. A story within a story in the sense, so we read number of stories around. While we are reading, it happens for us to observe the images which have been there in the story. So by seeing that story, we go into an abstract. That means we get different kinds of ideas in our mind. That makes us to think beyond the story. That it's like a story within a story. For example, you can see that the tortoise and the hare. The story what we read, it will be different when we observe the images, right? So tortoise and the hare, right? It's all about the running race and all, right? So the story tells one thing, but then when we are seeing the images, it gives another idea to the reader. So such kind of stories comes under allegory. Are simple, these are very simple allegories about morality. In the sense, these stories, most of the allegories gives moral at the end. Simple thing is that the stories which are in the form of allegory that gives moral, right? You can say that tortoise and the hare. So it all tells us about the cleverfulness, how a person should be very cleverful than the strength and all. So being cleverful is very, very important. So such a kind of morality is given through the story. So most of the allegories gives the moral, right? So and also how to remember this allegory? Allegory, it's a story within a story. Some kind of allegories are also there, stories are there, which also depicts dark, complex, and controversial ideas in the story. So here, allegory in the sense, it's a type of stories, it's a type of plots where the characters and plots depict abstract ideas beyond the things, beyond the story. Example, as I told you, Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is one of the story which has been written by George Orwell. So this dystopian novella, this is one of the story, one novel, which has been very famous in the modern literature. A commentary on the events leading up to Stalin's rise. So what happened here? Stalin is one of the character and the formation of the Soviet Union. So what kind of things, whatever the leading he has taken, that was given. The pigs at the heart of the novel represent figures such as Stalin. So in the story, the pigs at the heart of the novel represents figures such as Stalin. So what that story, that images of these pigs and all gives another idea. That's an abstract idea, right? Such as like Trotsky and Molotov. So these are different characters who have been mentioned in the story. So this is about the allegory. A simple thing. How could we remember this allegories? Allegory in the sense, a story within a story. The story which is depicted in that many images will be given. So once when we see the image, so beyond the story, the reader starts thinking. And also most of the allegories will end up with by giving a beautiful moral to the story. So this is all about allegory. Hope everyone is clear with the allegory. Now let's get into another literary device. So coming to the alliteration. Alliteration describes a series of words in quick succession that all start with the same letter or sound. It lends a pleasing cadence, rhythm to prose. Cadence in the sense nothing but rhythm to prose. In the sense while we are reading, the kind of rhythm will be given when a more alliteration is observed. So let us say in deep about this alliteration. Alliteration is when two or more words that start with the same sounder. It's not same letter, my dear friends. It's all about the sounds are used repeatedly in a phrase or a sentence. The repeated sound creates the alliteration, not the same letter. As I told you, it's not the matter of the letter. It's the matter of the sound. So what happened in the prose or in the poetry part? So when we start reading, number of words starts with the same letter, and if it gives the same kind of sound, though the letter is different, but the sound, if it is same, then it is known as alliteration. For example, you can say that in a prose part, you might have seen a word like tasty tacos, tasty tacos, tasty tacos, sound is repeated. And both the letters, both the words have started with term and is giving same kind of sound, if you might have observed there, is considered an alliteration. But 30 typist, you can see here also, it also started with T as well. Here also it started with T. But then the sound is different. 30 typist, ta, th. There is a different, this is like different between the sound. That means words have started with the same letter. The sound is different. But then here, if you might have seen, tasty tacos, ta sound is there. So such a way, in a prose part or in the poetry part, if in the same line, if two different words starts with the same sound, then such kind of words and such kind of sentences are known as alliteration. Because here you can see that 30 and typist is not. It's not an alliteration because though the letters are same, the sounds are different. Because th and t don't sound the same. Alliteration is a type of repetition, a repetition of sounds. Okay, repetition is one more literary device where the same word is repeated a number of times in the same line or in the same stanza. But here what I'm saying, alliteration, different words starts with the same sound. That is known as alliteration, right? Hope everyone is clear with this alliteration. Let's get into next one. Anaphora. Anaphora. What do you mean by anaphora? Anaphora in the sense is a repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of a series of clauses or sentences. It's often seen in poetry and speeches intended to provoke an emotional response in its audience. So anaphora in the sense, it's very clear that two consecutive to different lines, two or more than that. So what happens starts with the same words, isn't it? Some words or phrases begins with the same phrases or the words. Here you can see the example that Martin Luther King's 1963 Our Dream speech, our dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, right? And I have a dream that one day on red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So you can observe these all sentences where all these sentences have started with I have, right? So all the sentences have started with I. Anaphora is nothing but in the initial lines of every line, right? In a paragraph or in a poem or in a prose, what happens? If a sentence begins with the same word or the same phrase at the beginning, then it is known as anaphora. Then it is known as anaphora. Now let's get into another literary device, that is anastrophe. What do you mean by anastrophe? Anastrophe is a figure of speech. Anastrophe is a figure of speech wherein a traditional sentence structure is reversed. So a typical verb subject adjective sentence such as are you ready? Ready are you? Or a standard adjective noun pairing like Tall mountain becomes mountain tall. In the sense, it is very simple to remember and very simple to identify, my dear friends. See here, anastrophe in the sense it's a figure of speech where, see, generally there is a formal sentence. We'll say, how are you? Isn't it? So this is a common sentence when we see someone will ask, how are you? Are you how? It's a different sentence. The way we are speaking is different, right? That means the words have been reversed. Here also you can see, are you ready? Is a formal sentence. Generally we speak. But then sometimes in the poetry part or in the prose part, to give rhyme and rhythm, the poet has its own license, right? Like by using ready, are you? It's not in a structural way, but the formal words have not been used. The words have been reversed. So such kind of words, when we have seen the words which have been reversed, then it is known as anastrophy. So such kind of words, if you such kind of phrases of words, if you have seen in any sentence, then the literary term is such kind of words. When you have observed, then such a kind of words, such a kind of phrases. So those all comes under this anastrophe literary term. And also adjectives like tall mountain, mountain tall. So adjectives in the sense the word that describes a noun. So tall mountain. But then here what happened? Mountain tall, we have reversed the words. So here you can see that the words have been reversed. So you can see that how here you can see mountain tall, right? Tall mountains. Are you ready? Ready are you? So these are the words which have been reversed. So these, so when we observe these kind of reversed words or reversed phrases and all, then it is known as anastrophe. Example: deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing. So driven by Edgar Allan Poe. So here the words have been reversed in this example also, if you might have seen, right? So this is all about anastrophe. Let's get into another literary devices. So that is anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism. What is this anthropomorphism? To anthropomorphize, so is to apply human traits to or qualities to a non-human things, such as objects, animals, or the weather. But unlike personification, in which this is done through figurative description, anthropomorphism is literal. A sun with a smiling face, or for example, or talking dogs in cartoon, right? So this is also simply like a personification. Personification, what do you mean by personification? Personification in the sense giving human life to non-human. So, but there is a slight difference between anthropomorphism and personification, right? First, let us see what is anthropomorphism. Then later we'll try to understand the difference between anthropomorphism as well personification. So it is to apply human traits or qualities to non-human, isn't it? So giving human character to a non-human, such as objects or animals or the weather. But unlike personification, in which this is done through figurative description, right? So anthropomorphism is literal. A sun with a smiling face. So is smiling is a character of a human? Sun, sorry? No, it's not the character of a sun. Sun will not smile. Smiling will be done by a human being. But then we have given that character to a sun. So this is known as anthropomorphism, right? This is known as anthropomorphism. So here you can see a talking dogs. Will the dog talks? No, dog will not talk, it barks. But then we are giving that in the cartoons, we see that. We give the life to the dog by giving human trait. So this is known as anthropomorphize. So in Restless Beauty and the Beast, Mrs. Potts, the teapot, Cogsworth the clock, the numerous, the candlestick are all household objects that act and behave like humans. So you can see that in cartoon channels and all, we observe that. So all these non-humans, isn't it, where we are giving human traits to them, they start working like a human, they start behaving like a human. So those kind of things which we observe, that those all are known as anthropomorphism. So what is the difference between, simple difference between anthropomorphism as well personification? Let us see. Personification is the use of figurative language to give inanimate objects or natural phenomena human-like characteristics in a metamorphical and representative way. Anthropomorphism, on the other hand, involves non-human things displaying literal human traits and being capable of human behavior. So this is a small difference where we have anthropomorphism as well personification. Both the things gives human life to the non-human. But this is the slight difference. What is a figurative language personification, which give inanimate object in the sense what here it is different. Inanimate object or natural phenomena, human are like, isn't it, characteristics in metamorphical and representative way. But anthropomorphism, what it is, anthropomorphism, on the other hand, involves non-human things, right? Displaying literal human traits and being capable of human behavior. So that means behaving like human things. We will give human trait, human qualities to non-human in personification. But here what happened? Here it behaves like human. It behaves like human. In the sense, sun behaving like a human, as we are saying, as we have used here, a smiling face when the sun is glowing, you see that smiling face, that means it's a behavior is done over them. Giving qualities of human being is different. And the behavior of human being when it is given to the non-thing, isn't it? That means non-human. That is anthropomorphism. This is all about anthropomorphism. So let's see another literary device. Yeah, let's get into aphorism. Aphorism in the sense is a universal accepted truth stated in a concise in the sense to self, to the point way. Aphorisms are typically witty and memorable, often become adages and proverbs as people repeat them over and over. Something has gone, we use that. This is the way you have to do, right? So what universally accepted truth by using number of proverbs, isn't it? So we generally people use number of times, isn't it? So truthful man reaches the God's heaven. So such kind of words we use. These are truth. These are truth. These are all the truth which we have to accept. So which have been used by generations together, and people use as per the situation, right? So such kind of things comes under aphorism. Example to is human, to forgive divine. This is a proverb where we apply for a human being. Depends upon the situation, but that is the fact. That is the fact which one has to realize. So such kind of terms, if you have used in any sentence, then it is known as aphorism, right? Aphorism. Let's get into another literary device, that is archetype. An archetype is a universal symbol that brings familiarity and context to a story. It can be a character, a setting, a theme, or an action. Archetypes represent feelings and situations that are shared across cultures and time periods and are therefore instantly recognizable to any audience. For instance, the innocent child character or the theme of the inevitability of death. Example, Superman is a heroic archetype, noble, self-sacrificing, and drawn to righting injustice whenever he sees it. In the sense, what happened here, it's a universal type. Simple way how to remember is universal. It's a universal symbol in the sense number of things we observe around. We see number of movies and all, right? Sometimes that characters we generally involve that in that particular character, and we feel that that character is a part of our life, and we feel that they are very familiar to us. For example, Superman is a heroic archetype. Yeah, Superman. We know that Superman is not in real, but then we have a familiar connection with that particular character. So that particular character, such a kind of characters, if they have involved in any other type, so that is known as archetype, right? If we have seen such kind of characters, and which makes though we imagine that they are very familiar to us, we know that it's a character which have been created, isn't it, which were created over there, but then we feel very familiar with such kind of characters. So then such kind of characters are known as archetype. So once again, let's see, archetype is a universal symbol that brings familiarity to context to a story. In the story, the different characters which we see, and we feel that they are very familiar to us, though we know that it's a character which have been created, but then we feel that the character is very familiar to us. So here, Superman is a heroic archetype, noble, sacrificing, and drawn into righting injustice whenever he sees it. Isn't it? Whenever we see that person, we feel that so familiar to us, right? Such kind of characters, if they have been given, and if human starts feeling that the character is very familiar to us, then such kind of a scenario in a story or in a poem or anywhere itself, then it is known as archetype. This is all about the archetype literary term. Let's get into the another one. So that is
chiasmus. So what is chiasmus means? Is when two or more parallel clauses are inverted. You can say, why would I do that? You may be wondering, well, chiasmus might sound confusing and unnecessary in theory, but it's much more convincing in practice. And in fact, you have like already come across it. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. You can see as a sentence. So chiasmus in the sense nothing but you can see that inverted commas, isn't it? Parallel clauses are inverted. Say, why would I do that? You may be wondering, well, a chiasmus might sound confusing and unnecessary in theory, but it's much more convincing in practice. See here, example, ask not what your country can do for you. Right. Ask what you can do for your country. The sentence, the phrases which have been given in a direct sense, isn't it? Where the parallel clauses are inverted. So you can see these inverted commas over here. Such kind of sentences, when you have observed in the poetry part or in the prose part, then that kind of term is known as chiasmus literary term. Let's get into the another literary device, that is colloquialism. So colloquialism, in the sense, colloquialism is the use of casual and informal language in writing, which can also include slang. Writers use colloquialism to provide context to setting and characters, and to make their writing sound more authentic. Imagine reading a novel that takes place in modern America, and the characters speak to each other like this. Right. So generally we observe that when foreigners are speaking, we just observe them because the words and the slang, the accent, what they produce is different when we compare with our language. Right. So what happened here? Writers use such a kind of slang in the writing part, which are not familiar to us while we are speaking. Right. So such kind of words, if you might have observed in any writing skill, then that is known as colloquialism. So good morning, you. I hope that you slept well and are prepared for this morning science exam. It's not realistic. Colloquialism helps create believable dialogue, isn't it? So believable dialogue, example, Transporting by Irvin Welsh takes place in Scotland, a fact made undeniable obvious by the dialect. Thing is, yeah, get altered. This character deficiency becomes mad. Snapping, you can see different words. You can see different words here. Jake becomes as you get older. There was a time I used tease, chain, or the teachers, bosses, dole punters, poll tax guys, magistrates when they told me I was deficient, I cool it, gad, I'm just me, just inte a different sort or jig fave use but can. So what you can see that these all are the words which are being used by the American people, modern American people, right? The accent, the words which are being used in their general communication. So those words the writer used to give beauty to the sentence or in the prose or the poet parts, right? So such kind of words, if it have been used number of times repeatedly and number of things where you have seen such kind of words, then it's nothing but it is known as colloquialism. So what it is colloquialism. So this is one kind of literary term, right? So hope you're clear with these literary terms. Tomorrow, let's see few more literary terms. Thanks for watching. Keep watching and to enhance your literary wisdom. Thank you. Have a nice day.